Down here, Center City.
Steering the camera real fast.
We went to center? All right. Whatever.
Testing 1, 2. We'll start the town hall meeting in about 1 minute, please. Okay, good evening. Well, thank you for coming out tonight for this important issue we have. For those who do not know me, my name is Frank Sipple, the mayor of Lower Township. Everyone on this stage, all Township Council, all the county commissioners are strongly against this drastic change we're going to hear about tonight. Tonight you'll receive a presentation from Mr. Pete Lomax of Lomax Consultant Group. I do want to thank the county administrator, Kevin Lair, the assistant administrator, Ryan Simone, and the commissioners for allowing Mr. Lomax to give us this presentation. The County Board of Commissioners has been the tip of the spear on this issue, not only in the county, but throughout the state. I want to thank Mr. John Trenchin and the director of the theater and the student staff for setting up and helping us have this town hall meeting. Thank you, John. It's important that we know our elected officials, since we need all our help in fighting these new rules by the DEP. I'd like to introduce State Assembly Eric Simonson, State Assemblyman Antoine McClellan, Vice Director Andy Blakowski, County Commissioner Melanie Collette, Deputy Mayor Dave Perry, Councilman Tom Conrad, Councilman Kevin Coombs, and Councilman Roland Roy, Township Manager Mr. Mike Laffey. Those on the panel who will speak tonight are Mr. Lomax will give a presentation. Assemblyman Simonson and McClellan will give you their perspective on these new rule changes. Commissioner Blakowski, who also represents the Building and Trades Union, he'll speak on the impact of future local construction. Those on the panel from Lower Township will be here to answer questions are Mr. Gail Stock, Lower Township Director of Planning, Mr. Gary Douglas, Lower Township Superintendent of Public Works, Mrs. Elizabeth Ross, Lower Township Tax Assessor, Mr. Rob Velasco, Lower Township Solicitor, Mr. Mark de Blasio, Lower Township Engineer. At this time, I ask everybody to please mute your cell phones. We ask everyone to please hold your questions to the very end. During the question period, we ask you to come up to the microphone in front of the aisle. We have 2 microphones here in front. Just form a line. If for some reason we're unable to answer a question, Mr. Laffey will be near the microphone. We'll take your contact information get back to you. We will not take a break, so if you need to use the restroom, please do so throughout the presentation. The public comment period on these new rules is open until November 3rd. If you disagree with these rule changes, we need your help to fight these changes. There'll be tables in the back floor area with letters already typed up that need to be signed and mailed to the DEP and the governor's office. We'll do the mailing, you just need to sign the letters. There's also a QR code that you can scan to your cell phone and send emails to post these new rules, and please do both, letters and the QR code. In addition, we have maps and a table set up to tell you if your home is in a new flood zone proposed by the DEP. This meeting is being live streamed currently as we speak. Please wait until we're finished tonight before visiting the tables. Again, please wait until Mr. Lomax has finished his presentation. We hear from both the Assemblymen and Commissioner Wojciechowski for any questions. At this time, we'll show 3 short videos, then the floor will be turned over to Mr. Lomax.
The DEP says it's using credible science to mandate the most extreme land use rules in the nation, but let's get real about their science. The DEP is projecting in a problem of 5.1 feet of sea level rise over the next 75 years in New Jersey. They're basing it on a single low-confidence data point from a 2019 Rutgers study that was never intended to be used as a policy document, all while the international climate change science community, using more updated and comprehensive data, doesn't project anything close to that much sea level rise by the year 2100. But because the DEP is seeking to use this 5-foot sea level rise standard, most homes and businesses in New Jersey shore and river communities will face a wave of burdensome and costly conditions to build or rebuild in the near future. And more people will need to buy costly flood insurance, even as more DEP restrictions diminish their property values. Tell your mayor or your state lawmakers to stop DEP's overreach based on faulty science and ideology, and encourage resiliency over retreat. Go to njpia.org/stop-the-retreat. Don't believe the DEP's extreme land use rules won't be the start of a retreat of the Jersey Shore? Well, don't take our word for it. The DEP writes about it in their own climate change resilience strategy. And with their proposed rules calling for many unworkable and costly conditions to build or rebuild, the DEP is effectively driving residents and businesses away from the shore and urban river communities. Tell your mayor or your state lawmakers to stop DEP's overreach and encourage resiliency over retreat. Go to njpia.org/stop-the-retreat. NJDEP says their proposed land use rules won't create no-build zones of the Jersey Shore and in urban river communities. But here's a reality check. The rules establish an expansive inundation risk zone, including areas that have never flooded, and in order to build or rebuild in an IRZ, you'll be subject to the following: elevating your home or building 5 feet over current flood standards with more stringent building requirements. You'll need to produce an alternative analysis to show where else on a site you can build or why you can't build somewhere else. And you'll be required to have a deed notice for when you sell your house, stating the property will someday be underwater and hurting the resale value. On top of that, your home will only be allowed to have 3% of impervious cover on site. Let's get real. The DEP restrictions create no-build zones by any other name, which could force a retreat from the Jersey Shore and other urban river communities. Tell your mayor or your state lawmakers to stop the DEP's overreach. Go to njpia.org/stop-the-retreat. NJPEP's
Good evening, Mayor. Thank you for the kind introduction. Assemblyman, Commissioner, members of the governing body, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you this evening. And importantly, for the public, thank you for taking time from your personal lives, from your busy schedules, and for joining us this evening to understand more about the proposed rules. My name is Peter Lomax, as the mayor said, from the Lomax Consulting Group, and we were tasked by Kootenai County, by the county commissioners, to go through the over 1,000-page rule proposal. Even before there was a rule proposal, the county had us go through the DEP documentations to start to understand what 1,000 pages of new regulations means for Kootenai County and the folks that live and work and reside and recreate in the coastal zone. And what we came to understand very quickly, even before the rules were proposed, was that there were dramatic changes coming, and those would substantially impact the way that new development would occur, but also out of concern the way that redevelopment would be addressed in the future. And even more so, and something that is a bit new, is that the rehabilitation of homes would also be regulated by these rules. And so it was very important to begin to quantify and understand exactly how these changes would impact all of us. As the mayor said, we're in the midst of a public comment period presently. That began in early August, and we're less than a month away from the close of the public comment period, which is why it is incredibly important for those of you here tonight to take the opportunity to understand the rules, to express your concerns to the state by way of written comments. Unfortunately, the public hearings for these rules were all front-loaded into the public comment period, so those have all concluded by this point. But I would convey to you that Kootenai County was incredibly foresighted in their look to understand these rules and to put comments together very early on. Members of the county attended the only in-person public hearing and provided comments at that time directly to DEP, and thereafter there have been 2 virtual public hearings where additional comments have been provided. But to be clear, the clock is ticking, and as I said, there's less than a month until the comment period closes, and that is effectively the only remaining time that's left to let your concerns be heard, whether you have questions about the rules, whether you have comments or critiques about the rules, whether you're confused. This is your opportunity to weigh in, and we're certainly here tonight. There's a panel of experts that are assembled to field your questions. But please do not miss the opportunity at the conclusion of this to make sure that public comments are submitted, and the township has made sure to pull together resources to help you in that regard. So as I said, the scope of these rules, they impact new development, redevelopment, and rehabilitation where substantial improvement occurs. What is substantial improvement? So where the renovation costs during rehabilitation exceed 50% of the market value of the structure, that's a metric. So as soon as you reach 50%, you hit a substantial improvement threshold, and at that point, any work that's done is subject to these rules. Okay. So how did we get to this point? I think there are 2 important numbers to take away from this. One is 5 feet, and the other is the year 2100. Rutgers convened a scientific panel initially in 2016 and again in 2019 to study climate change and sea level rise. And their particular interest was trying to predict into the future where might we expect sea level rise to occur and what are the probabilities of exceeding certain heights. So I turn your attention to the screen. This is a table metric that summarizes that study. And if you would look at the column that says 2100, there's a tan column under the moderate emissions column, the year 2100, and you'll see numbers 1.3, 2.0, 3.3, 5.1, 6.9. And to the left, you'll see probabilities of exceedances. So DEP selected the year 2100, that's 75 years into the future, as the planning horizon for these regulations, out of concern that anything that was constructed in the forthcoming years could conceivably exist in the year 2100. They were concerned about infrastructure, critical sites like schools and hospitals and police stations, but also concerned about residences, and we'll get to that in a minute in terms of whether 2100 is a sufficient planning horizon. At the same time, they also looked at the probability that sea level would exceed certain height thresholds during that period of time. And they concentrated on two numbers. So in the yellow column, in the yellow row, moving from left to right, you'll see a 50% chance, and lining up with the year 2100 moderate column, that's 3.3 feet. So what that means is, based on this panel's science, they concluded that there was a 50% chance that sea level would exceed 3.3 feet of rise by the year 2100. DEP was concerned that a 50% chance was not sufficient for their planning and regulatory purposes, so they looked to the next number down, and the confidence at a 17% chance that sea level would exceed 5.1 feet by the year 2100, and they chose that more conservative of the two metrics. So these rules, as we go through them, you'll see are all tied back to 5 feet, which is the 17% predicted exceedance by the year 2100. There are two components to these rules that cause substantial concern. One is that they create a new regulated area called the inundation risk zone. And the second is that they adjust our 100-year flood elevations as well to a new climate-adjusted flood elevation. So we're basically taking existing known elevations and adding 5 feet to them. I should point out that these rules will impact, these proposed rules will impact a series of regulations that already exist. You may have heard of CAFRA, or waterfront development. Those are topics that are covered under the coastal zone management rules. The NJPACT real rule proposal will insert new regulations into the coastal zone management rules. It will do the same in the freshwater wetlands protection rules. It will do likewise in the Flood Hazard Area Control Act rules, and again in the stormwater management rules. As you well know, we are heavily regulated in New Jersey. Land use has 5 levels of regulatory control in the state of New Jersey, and the PACT real rules added an additional component to that regulatory process. And they do so in these two areas. So if you turn your attention to the screen, you'll see a graphic which shows the current sea level at this elevation, and then adding 5 feet to that at this level. That becomes the predicted future sea level in the year 2100. And that establishes the proposed inundation risk zone. That takes the current mean higher high water line, our current shoreline, and moves that 5 feet in elevation upward. We all understand in Kippax County that 5 feet of elevation is significant. It moves horizontally much more readily than it does vertically. So 5 feet of elevation in Kippax County creates a lot of land mass that ends up being enveloped in this inundation risk zone. And we call that the IRZ. In addition to that, these rules take our current 100-year flood elevation and add 5 feet to that to a climate-adjusted flood elevation. Meaning that the current FEMA flood maps, which establish flood zones based on a 100-year flood and establish base flood elevations with design flood elevations 1 foot above that before your finished floor elevation. These proposed rules would add an additional 5 feet to that. So by example, for a property that is in an A8 zone, so 8-foot flood elevation, these proposed rules would convert the 8-foot flood elevation to 13 feet, and then by extension for the finished floor elevation add an additional foot to 14 feet. Next. So another graphic representation of the inundation risk zone, where we have our current sea level, homes that are constructed along the shoreline above this sea level elevation. And when we add 5 feet to create the inundation risk zone, we add 5 feet and we can see in a locale similar to Kidman County where we have very little change in topography, just the extent of shoreline change from present to future by adding 5 feet. And we can also see that that inundation risk zone creates a disconnect between where our homes are constructed and where the future shoreline is predicted. So again, the inundation risk zone is the area that DEP considers will be permanently inundated in the future by our new sea level. In doing this, DEP's stated goal is to regulate coastal redevelopment, where the need for land use approvals can be leveraged to mitigate future anticipated changes. What does that mean? That means that by creating an inundation risk zone in an area of new regulation and forcing homeowners to get permits to construct, reconstruct, or to rehabilitate in those locations, it creates a permitting process where DEP is then able to influence the location of that construction and the manner in which that construction is proposed. Developing the inundation risk zone, as you saw in the earlier video, will require an impact assessment, looking at what are the impacts of developing on that property and what will the impacts be to the adjoining properties, as well as an on-site alternatives analysis, where a design professional will be hired, must be hired, to look at alternative locations on the property or elsewhere for developing, as opposed to proposing the project on that site. And then lastly, will require a risk acknowledgement, where a deed notice will be attached to the deed for the property in perpetuity, indicating that it is anticipated in the future to be underwater. What you see before you is the disproportionate impact of these rules, where DEP has indicated that only 1.5% of the state will be impacted. This clearly shows a different picture in Kidman County. All the areas that are depicted in blue are the extent of the inundation risk zone. So this is adding 5 feet to our current shoreline, and what you see in blue is the inundation risk zone. If your property is in the blue area, you will be subject to these rules if you propose to develop anew, redevelop, or rehabilitate your home to a substantial improvement in nature. The other thing that I think is really important to be aware of is that these areas extend well into not just the Barrier Island communities as you might expect, but they also extend into low-lying communities along the Delaware Bay shore and those neighborhoods that are adjacent to Fishing Creek, Pond Creek, Townhall Creek, many of the tidal river systems that we have along the western shore of the county. So just real quick, we have the Delaware Bay at the north of this figure, the Atlantic Ocean to the south. For the purposes of demonstration, obviously we've laid Kidman County over on its side with Lower Township here, and you can see these neighborhoods which are impacted substantially inland from just the beachfront areas. So now, closer up and zoomed into the southern portion of the Cape, where we can look at these neighborhoods in Lower Township and on the border between Lower and Middle, as well as along the Route 9 Garden State Parkway corridor, where the inundation risk zone reaches well into those communities beyond what we typically consider to be the limit of tidal action and flow. Okay, we'll move on to the climate-adjusted flood elevation. By the way, I would just note that 43% of Kidman County is in an inundation risk zone. That's substantially larger than 1.5%, and it's something that we should be concerned about and not be willing to have that acreage diminished in a broad brush stroke by the state. The climate adjusted flood elevations. So going back to our original figure, you'll notice we have current sea level and then a future anticipated sea level. So even if we adjust to a future anticipated sea level, you'll see in this figure we've added fill to the site. We've kept the house in the same location, but added some fill to the property to elevate this above an anticipated future sea level. But then we also have to account for current flood elevation. So homes that were renovated after Hurricane Sandy and brought to the finished floor elevation 1 foot above the current FEMA requirements, those will now experience, under these new rules, any development that would change the footprint, the habitable area of those structures through renovation or by redevelopment would experience a substantial change with an additional 5 feet and the need to build a finished floor elevation, again, 1 foot above that new flood elevation. This impacts 60% of Kidney County. Again, the same orientation where we have Delaware Bay to the top and the Atlantic Ocean to the bottom. And what you see in orange is the existing FEMA mapped flood elevations, and then what you see in red is the expansion of those flood elevations by an additional 5 feet. What this graphic doesn't convey are those homes that are built within the orange area, within the existing flood elevations, that were constructed above the current base flood elevation so that they were compliant with the flood rules, but that will experience the need to elevate if they decide to renovate or redevelop in a way where these rules become part of that consideration. And again, renovation through a substantial improvement to the property. Next slide. Let's get forward to sheet 3. So, you can see similar areas that are shown as being impacted, but much more substantial than what we saw in the blue inundation risk zone. So what you can be assured of is that any area that's in the climate-adjusted flood elevation is already in the inundation risk zone, but you have the added requirement of additional finished floor elevation. I said earlier that these rules were anticipated to regulate development by the year 2100 because the thought was that any development that would occur in the preceding years would still be around in the year 2100. But I think what these rules fail to understand, especially in Kidney County, and especially within our residential housing stock, that we go through development cycles, right? And it's very likely that we would see 2 to 3 cycles of residential construction or reconstruction in that 75-year period. Which brings us to the question of whether these rules are appropriate, whether that planning horizon in the 5 feet is appropriate. And I think we've come to the conclusion that these rules are drastic. There was a resounding concern amongst all 16 municipalities. We looked at these rules and came to the same conclusion. Too much, all at once, without the ability to understand the economic impacts of these rules, the operational impacts, and why we can't plan for more reasonable horizons, looking at a 20-year period as opposed to a 75-year period, and making adjustments incrementally over time, as our municipalities have done proactively by adopting ordinances to raise their freeboards voluntarily as part of the CRS program, to require redevelopment at higher levels than what FEMA requires. We don't necessarily need the state to tell us how to prepare for climate change. We're in the process of doing it ourselves. That's not to say that we shouldn't make adjustments and that we shouldn't have adaptation over time because we are seeing coastal storm intensification, we are seeing additional flooding, but there's a way to adapt in a thoughtful process instead of trying to do everything all at once without giving the public, the regulated public, and the businesses here in Kidman County the ability to adapt to that change over time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lomax. And now we ask for somebody in the audience to say a few words.
Hello. I have a question. At the very end, sir. At the very end. What was concerning the crash and all that? At the very end, we'll take all the questions. We'll put the mouse back.
All right, so you've heard Mr. Lomax has done his homework and he's been at the forefront of this for Cape May County, and Lower Township's been out in front of this. I want to thank the mayor and council and manager. Also want to thank Lower Cape May for having you here this evening. It's a great turnout. So this is so important. We really need, when we leave here tonight, you need to get the word out. Because here's the most disturbing part of this whole thing. First of all, like Mr. Lomax said, this is a drastic measure. It's inappropriate, but the most inappropriate thing is that myself and Assemblyman McClellan, along with Senator Testa, were elected by the people in Legislative District 1. We represent all of Cape May County, most of Cumberland County, and a little bit of Atlantic County. The governor has made this an executive order, Executive Order 100, and what that means is that your representatives that you send up to the State House don't get a chance to vote on this on your behalf. And that should disturb you, because I can tell you what, it disturbs me. And the fact that we don't get to represent the people from our legislative district, and really throughout the state, no one does. So this is an executive order, which means it bypasses the legislature in New Jersey. It bypasses the Assembly, and it bypasses the Senate. And it is an executive order. It's just something with the strike of a pen that the governor feels he can pass. And, you know, there have been many things put out there, alternatives, like Mr. Lomax said. We could look at 25 years, even 50 years, but to look at the 100-year storm and base everything off of that is really ludicrous. And, you know, it's up to the people in this room and those people. We'll have another, I know Antoine will be up here in a second, but we're doing other town halls to get the word out to people, because the only way, you know, we have power in numbers. So if we fight this, it's, and I also, it's a lot like the wind turbines and I know I saw many people coming in that have been part of that fight. And look what happened. Orsted and the other companies have finally pulled out. That fight's not over yet. But, you know, we have to use our voice, and our voice is our power. And like I said, this is an executive order. And the fact that they're going to bypass the legislature is dishonest to me. And it's going to affect us. If you look, our legislative district, we cover the Delaware Bay, all up and down the coast of Cumberland County, all up and down the coast of the Atlantic Ocean as well. All those beach towns, shore towns, and now it's even moving inward. So those that already pay flood insurance are going to have to pay more flood insurance. There's people that haven't paid, that haven't had to pay flood insurance, nor should they, that now are going to have to pay flood insurance. And then I won't get into the, I know Commissioner Bulakowski's going to talk about the impact of construction, but any new construction is going to be hugely affected by this. So I don't want to be up here too long and beat a dead horse, but we need to get this information out. There is still time to fight this, and I know the mayor will talk later. We have plenty of letters and things that we're going to help you with to get that word out and to get your voice heard up in Trenton. So I just ask you to, please, when you leave here tonight, take this information, take pictures of the maps, take any handouts, whatever you can take with you, and Spread the good word to your neighbors, your enemies, whoever. People you like, people you don't like, because it affects us all, I can tell you. It doesn't matter. If you live anywhere near the water, it's going to affect you, and it's going to affect you in a very harmful way. So, again, I just ask for you to help us and disperse the information as best you can. And I thank you all for listening. Thanks for being here tonight. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Senator Simon. Now we'll ask Assemblyman H.R. McClellan to come up and say a few words, please.
Good evening, Mayor. Thank you for having me. Just to kind of reiterate what Assemblyman Simon said, and also to let you guys know that we are working with the rest of the legislators in this state. So myself and Assemblyman Simonson have been able to reach out to 7 other districts who've joined in the fight and have taken the letters that the county commissioners have put out and are duplicating that and sending it out to their residents as well. So, but we ask you not only to allow us to do that, but we ask you guys to do that as well. We know you have friends and family in other counties and other states and other cities throughout this country. Just let them know. They come and visit the shore. They're looking to change the shore. And we were up at Ocean County College for one of the hearings, and several people said that nobody should be living in shore communities. That they want the shore communities to be represented by the animals and the wildlife, and not people. So that's what they're trying to do. So just think about that. They don't want anybody living in the shore communities but animals. So they're trying to render us obsolete and not existent. So our way of life down here is the perfect way of life. We send $652 million of taxpayer dollars up to the county, up the train. And we don't get any representation on that. So we need to start fighting. We're fighting in the legislature, but we need our friends and our families and our residents of this county to fight as well. So please let all friends and family know, and anybody that you know that comes and rents your properties and things of that nature, that there's a problem on the horizon, and we're going to stand and fight. We fought for the wind turbines, we fought against it, stood up against it, and now they're having issues. And amazingly, they're giving tax breaks to wind turbines that anybody wants to continue to build. So if this thing happens, they're going to give tax breaks to those people that want to put wind turbines out in our oceans. So that's amazing as well. So this is what Trent is putting out there, and they're trying to do it on the dark and night, but we're not going to allow that to happen. Senator Testa and myself and Assemblyman Simonson are going to continue to fight, but we need your help. So please get out and galvanize yourselves, make sure you see those letters out back, send those letters up to Trenton, and we're going to continue to fight this with your help, and we're going to stop it. So enjoy your evening, but let's continue to fight. God bless.
Thank you, Assemblyman McClellan. And now we'll have Vice Director Blakowski say a few words.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to thank Lower Township for having me up here, as I am a Lower Township resident. I represent all of you in the county. It's an honor to be here. I have a little bit of a prepared statement for the county. The County Board of Commissioners, Director Len Desiderio, Commissioners Maury, Collette, Barr, and myself have been at the forefront on this issue, leading the charge in both the county and throughout the state. The proposed 1,100 pages of rules that are the most far-reaching and impactful since the establishment of CAFRA in the mid-1980s, and will have the greatest impact on the county of Cape May and its 16 municipalities, more so than any other county in New Jersey. To this point, the county has enlisted an expert on the subject matter, Peter Lomax, who has spoken, of Lomax Consulting, and made his services available to all 16 municipalities specific to this issue. The county wishes to thank Lower Township for hosting this forum and ask everyone to consider being an active participant and to make your voice heard. And Assemblyman McClellan and Simonson were absolutely correct in that fact, because it's your voices that can make the difference. And I want to let you know the county of Cape May was represented very well up at the live meeting in Tom's River. Commissioners Desiderio, Barr, Collette, myself, along with Administrator Kevin Lair, Deputy Administrator Ron Simone, and myself, along with Assemblyman McClellan, went up there and spoke in opposition of the governor's proposed regulations. I also am a member of the South Jersey Association of Commissioners, along with Commissioner Collette. We had a meeting last Monday, and this is something that affects counties across the board, and especially in South Jersey. It's a bipartisan effort because this is going to affect everyone. All the commissioners, including Atlantic County, want to be part of the opposition to this from the South Jersey Association of Commissioners. There were a few counties not there, Camden and Gloucester, so I can't speak on their behalf. So they asked me to come up and speak about the effects on what this would do to construction. The effects would be wide-ranging and highly detrimental. Residential and commercial construction would suffer greatly in coastal areas, but also affect the buffer zones and stormwater changes. Statewide, this would require existing structures that increase their footprint or do 50% of the value of their structure in renovations. This would implement the rules and regulations that Mr. Lomax spoke about. That would basically make new buildings or major renovations unaffordable to most property owners and small businesses, which a lot of us are here tonight, including myself. Residential elevations would almost always require high stairs or for folks that have trouble with stairs, elevators, which would increase the cost of the construction detrimentally to all of us. The construction industry would take a major hit because they would be working on projects that were paid for by large corporations who were extremely wealthy homeowners. They would be the only ones that could afford to build and cover the insurance, causing major devastation in business and extreme layoffs due to the shortage of projects. We also rely on the tourist industry and the second homeowners, not only in Lower Township, but in all of Cape May County, Atlantic County, Ocean, Monmouth. It's extremely important to us. This executive order would kneecap our economy and force retreat from the coastal areas. And as Mr. Lomax said, that's in the DEP plan. They want retreat from the coastal areas. All 16 municipalities in Cape May County are in lockstep opposing these proposed changes. So please be vocal, make your voice heard, because when we work together, we can affect change. Thank you.
I'd like to thank the four speakers we had tonight. Let's give a hand, please. You see by the presentation, the speakers up here, that we all work for you on this stage. We're doing our best to fight these rules, but we need your help. Like we've talked about several times, there's letters in the back room. We ask you please sign these letters. Give them back to us. We'll mail them for you first thing tomorrow morning. There's a QR code back here. Do the QR code. You can immediately email several people on the email chain to fight these rules. So now we'll go into the question period. So I would say in the best interest of time, please take no longer than 5 minutes each person so that everybody has a chance to address their questions. So if you have a question, please come up to the microphone in front of each aisle, and we'll go one at a time. Mr. Laffey's going to facilitate the microphones down. Hello. Where? Hello?
Can you hear me? Okay, yeah, my name's Paul Redding. I'm from Philadelphia. I just moved down here 2 years ago, but I owned my property for the last 7 years. right behind my house into Cox Street. And as long as I've been there, it's never flooded over. You know, I've never had a problem with flooding, except for when they put in the water system there and the engines shut down and we started getting flooded. But other than that, first thing I want to know is how much of my taxpayer pension money went towards doing all that grass and all that kind of stuff, all the studies and all that kind of stuff. You know, you projected for 75 years to the future. Did they compare that to 75 years in the past? Because growing up, I was always under the impression that the Jersey Shore was going to be underwater. So this is just, you know, projections are projections. Okay? How much did it cost to do these projections? Who's coming in to do these projections? Okay? I retired, moved down to here to live my life, and the last thing I need is for more money for my, I'm paying for flood insurance now, and I've never even seen a puddle in front of my house, even during the middle of the storm. You know, so how much more money am I going to have to pay for the flood insurance for FEMA? You know, if FEMA would turn around and put me the money over here in the United States instead of sending it over to another country, then we wouldn't have this problem. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, my name is Herb Lewis. I have a second home in the Villas, which at some point we would like to make our primary home and rebuild. And I want to talk about a subject that wasn't addressed today. I went to the Township office and found out that if this regulation passed, the maximum height would remain unchanged at 35 feet. And I don't understand why that would be the case.
Mr. Dalestock, can you help with this question, please?
At this point in time, that is what the ordinance says. We would probably take a look at that in the future if this went through. Okay.
Hello, my name is Daniel Batesel. I have a problem with everything that's going on here with this. All right, so basically I did some survey work. So I learned that water seeks its own level. Okay? I went to the Hoover Dam, 14 years ago, 10, 14 years ago, and I noticed, wow, that water level was really down there. It was no longer a threat to come over the bridge like it was many years ago. Other than that, when I came home for the service, I used to like to play down in the gun camp, which was covered by water. Now it's probably to that wall over there. There's no water. I think we should be worried about where our water's going and not so much where our water's going to be coming and flooding us out. Okay? If water's high in the bay, it's because nobody dredges the bay. You get all that bullshit that comes down from the rivers and the creeks into the first part of the bay. It stacks up. Guess what? Yeah, you're going to have a chance of flooding there. So somebody should be thinking about, hey, how about if we take some of this mud out of the equation that should be here because it's supposed to be on the land? I mean, that's where it came from. So, like I said, we don't have no trouble. I know there is global warming. I realize that the icebergs are falling down and melting. Well, they're melting, to my opinion, to provide us with water. My question to you is, that last projected figure at the DEP, did we ever make it to that height? So whatever that last projected figure was, did we get there? Or are we still lower than what that projected figure was?
I think the figure that you're referring to, that table had all future elevations in it.
Right, we never made it to any of those future elevations, right?
We haven't arrived at those years yet. But your point is that I believe, that if I'm understanding you correctly, your point is that we should be tying our regulations to real-world information, right? Where we can look at actual elevations over time and doing a more reasonable planning horizon of maybe 20 years instead of 75 years gives us the ability to look backwards and then understand what that next period of adjustment might need to be in the regulation.
Okay, so the other thing they should be doing is starting to thin out some of the stuff that comes out from the river. That's what's raising your levels in the face and your back pain. All that sediment. And we don't do anything about breaking it out and trying to move it. Like I said, I really highly believe that
Okay, thank you, sir. I just want to remind everybody that we're here for you. If you have any negative energy, hit the DEP and the governor's office with it. They need to be hit hard, okay? And also, please be sure when you're talking to microphones so the entire audience can hear your question, okay? Thank you.
You have to get close to the microphone when you talk. This side first.
Good evening. My name is Wayne Boyson. I'm originally from Philadelphia, like a lot of us are, retired. I live in Bayside Village, and I have a storm drain that goes right through my yard. I bought in 1993. Never seen it flood, thank God. But the thing is, I'd like to see this state become 2 states, North Jersey and South Jersey. They don't understand. A lot of us retirees down here, and we can't afford it. We're going to have to move. I couldn't afford it if I had to build up my house or whatever. Me and my wife are both retired. And I meet with a lot of senior citizens. We're in the same situation. Even the younger generation. Where do they go to job? It's hard finding a job anywhere. I got out of Philadelphia, which is one of the most dangerous cities in the world. Right now. We love it down here. When I came down here, there was a saying, it's not heaven that you can see it from here. And that's the way it's going. And how do we go back to one state, like North Carolina, South Carolina, North Dakota, South Dakota? Why can't we have North Jersey, South Jersey? For their own government. Amen. I vote for Dan Good. Dan Good. Good man.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, my name's Tim Conlon. I just want to know if we know what the water levels were 75 years ago and what the water levels are now. Did it increase that much as the projection?
Unfortunately, I don't have that information. DEP and the technical panel that Rutgers put together looked at only looking into the future based on predicted changes in temperature over time. What they expect will be the sea level change based on predictions.
Thank you.
My name is John Carter. I appreciate, first of all, thank you for all what you're trying to do and informing us and letting us know. It's never easy to be in a new position. Assuming that the organizing drive that you're trying to accomplish by notifying us fails, can a lawsuit be filed to stop the governor from doing what he's trying to do to us?
Oh, yeah, Mr. Velasco to answer that question. We're Simmons and Simons in 1, 2.
I think this is on. Can you hear me? Yeah. So, I mean, you can challenge anything through the court system. Whether there would be any merit behind that or it would actually be successful would have to bear out through the court system. This is all being done as Assemblyman Simonson referenced earlier through executive order, through the adoption of rulemaking, essentially. So it would be a tall order, but I suspect if this is passed, you will see legislation initiated by municipalities throughout the state attempting to challenge us, to fight for the residents and to fight for the citizens of this community.
Thank you.
I'd like to comment on that as well. So coincidentally, to your question, I have a question for you. What do you think the head of the DEP does when he's out of office next year, or when he's out of his job next year? He's an environmental lawyer. So I think that answers a huge question as to what he's setting himself up for once he's not up there in Trenton next year. So that's why we have to fight the good fight and continue to get the word out. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Christopher South. I'm with the Acadia County Herald newspaper. And the gentleman stole my thunder. I was asking, I asked the same question Senator Testa. And I asked, how far are you willing to go to battle this? And I'd like to hear from the Assemblyman on that. But I also wanted to know, what's the level of support from the other legislators who make up the New Jersey Assembly?
So as far as, there's an effort by the county that they're going to completely support and fight as they did with the wind turbines, and that has been discussed on the county level. I'm sure County Commissioner Chesky can deal with that as far as that's concerned. As far as the state legislature, as I said before, we notified 7 or 8 of other districts in this state, and we're going to continue to talk to them as we're back in session. This happened over the summer when we weren't in session. So we've been back in session, and we've been sending out letters, and they've been sending out letters as well. So as far as South Jersey is concerned, that's the next step. NJDEP is on board, which is another committee, and then also the state South Jersey Chamber is on board as well. So it's a collective effort to fight this. We're going to continue to fight as long as we can to make sure they repeal this and not cause these harsh problems that they're expecting us to have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Greg Roy. I've been on the Cliffside Road with my wife Natalie for 35 years or so. Live in Connecticut part of the year and the rest of the time down here. Mr. Lomax, great job. I was involved in the environmental impact movement in the 70s, doing assessments. And one of the things that you touched on, I heard briefly, Mr. Lomax, is that one variable that is supposed to be assessed is economic and another one is society. And I haven't seen any place where the economic impact has been quantified of these regulations. When you tell me that my house, the deed to my house is going to say, will be underwater, I think that's going to be one hell of a significant impact on my biggest investment in my life. And I wonder how many people in this room said, I got to go list my house tomorrow. That is a scare tactic, and I want to know what is the broad overreaching. I think they stated what the overreaching goal is to get us all off the Jersey Shore. But who's going to be in the Jersey Shore? It ain't going to be just animals. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Roy. You won't find that economic impact assessment because it wasn't conducted. In the work proposal, there is a section on economic impact. What the state chose to do is focus its economic assessment just on the damages that result from coastal storm events and flooding, but they didn't look at the flip side of the coin, which is what is the cost of these rules and their implementation? How does it impact homeowners, their property values? What does it potentially do with flood insurance costs? And almost, just as importantly as anything else, how does it impact the critical industries that we rely on in Cape May County, like tourism and commercial fishing, and the extent to which it has an adverse impact on commercial fishing operations for the loading and offloading of their vessels by having to change their finished floor elevations, and also by our hospitality and tourism industry and how they address visitors and residents and the ability to employ folks on a seasonal basis and to make sure that we have a housing stock that is affordable so that we have a service industry that can support our hospitality. It doesn't exist, and that's one of the reasons why we're so adamant about slowing this down, because the stakeholder engagement to put these rules together was biased, and my concern is that the economic impact didn't look broadly enough to quantify what those adverse challenges are to Cape May County as well.
That's because we're chess pieces, and they're just going to move us off the board. That's why we're here, Sam.
So I have a comment and then I guess several questions. So the comment is more around, I know the county, I do appreciate you guys actually put together your own, had Lomax Consulting do the analysis. Because it is, I mean, I went to the Township meeting and I listened to the third meeting, so it has been really, Cape May County has been extremely well represented in all these meetings, which is really nice. But it just seems like a colossal waste of money at the state, local level. And even if it does get passed, then we're just going to wind up in lawsuits, so it's just a colossal waste of taxpayer money. I understand why we're doing it, I understand it. It's just frustrating on our end. But that's the comment. So the question is more, I guess, for the Assemblyman, because this really, it is the DEP, but it's the governor, it's through the governor executive order. So in the 2 to 3 meetings I went to, the hearings, the DEP seemed to listen. But my question is, do you have a feeling of, are they actually going to be able to listen, or is the governor going to keep? Because he's kind of like the chess master, right? And they're actually the chess piece students. Any comment there?
Yeah, I will say, I believe, and this is my personal opinion, just from being in the State House and being up there so frequently, that I believe that the governor knows that he doesn't have the votes in the Assembly or the Senate, and that includes both sides of the aisle. And I believe that's why he's made it wants to make it an executive order. And I believe that if we put enough pressure on them, not just here, but all the counties, it's up and down the coast, that I believe, just like, again, we brought up the wind turbines, that they will feel the pressure to back off when he knows that both sides of the aisle and districts that are represented by both Republican and Democrat don't want this, and that it's going to affect everybody. You know, again, I've said it before, the strength of numbers, and at this point, this is our, you know, we have to make a stand on this and do what we can over the next month.
So what's the timeline? I know the comment period, the public comment period ends November 3rd. Has there been any set timeline for when it would be implemented if it's approved?
It's a great question. So depending on the number of comments the DEP receives, they'll be required to review them and address each one as a follow-up publication. And then based on those comments, based on the pressure and the critiques that they get or the support that they get, they'll have an opportunity to make revisions to the rule. There's been some debate back and forth as to how much the rule can be changed. Initially, in DEP's early presentations, they were representing that even the slightest change to an elevation, say to go from 5 feet to 3 feet or 5 feet to 4 feet or 5 feet to 2 feet, any change in that elevation would require an entire reproposal of the rule. There's been some softening on that position where there is the possibility of an amendment to the proposal to continue that process forward. So I think it's incumbent upon all of us to express those concerns and take the opportunity to try to amend the time frame and the elevations that they're contemplating. But if nothing changes, the rule will have to be adopted 1 year from the date of its first proposal. So 1 year from August 5th, 2024, that rule would have to be adopted, and then it would go through an implementation period.
And then after, so they're going to answer the questions, because this was asked at the first meeting. They're not, because I remember a gentleman asked that, he was from Teton County. He asked, well, so there's an online way to ask questions, but they weren't really going to answer the questions until it was adopted. So after the questions are answered, you just said that, is there another public hearing period or no? Because the way they answer it could change the way we interpret things, right?
Yes, exactly. It is a little difficult to anticipate what your next question might be based on the answer that you get. Yeah, so they will publish the answers to those questions, and again, they have the discretion to be able to open that back up or to just move forward to promulgation of the rule.
There wasn't any funding in the proposal at all for the heaviest hit areas, right? Whether it's evacuation routes or the homeowners or the business owners, none of that came with the proposal, correct?
That's correct. The rule stands itself as a regulation. It does not include funding mechanisms.
Okay. And then I guess the last question, because this was touched in other meetings, I mean, how much does this impact the county's ability for affordable housing plans? Because that, the gentleman said earlier, it does affect people that are retired, but for people that are younger, this county's already pretty hard to afford to live in, but you do need year-round residents and you definitely need year-round workers, so that's a big conflict.
It's a very important topic, one that the county takes a particular interest in. Assistant Administrator Simone has been tracking this very issue on affordable housing because, as you may know, Governor Murphy just passed new requirements for affordable housing that are being implemented throughout the state. As a concerned citizen of the county, but also as a sitting member of Middle Township's planning board, this one hits home, especially in Middle Township, because Middle just went through a planning process to restore or renew their centers. And in the process of doing that, DEP was the lone dissenting vote to having those centers approved. DEP opted not to approve the proposed centers because it included certain properties that they wanted excluded from the center. It just so happened that two of those properties that DEP wanted excluded were the very same properties that Middle Township had included in their fair share housing affordable settlement process to be able to construct affordable housing. So what we have here, and it's sad, but this is oftentimes the case where you have parallel tracks of regulation that aren't talking to one another and end up being mutually exclusive with one another. So at the same time that we're trying to address climate change, we're undercutting the ability of municipalities to have sufficient land area to provide for affordable housing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Carol Villafana. I'm wondering, does New Jersey have its own state constitution? And is there a way to challenge the governor based on that constitution? How is it legal for him to sign an executive order without having the input of the legislatures?
So New Jersey has its own constitution. Every state has their own constitution, and you have the United States Constitution as well. There are divisions of government, right? You have your judicial system, you have your executive branch, and you have your legislative branch. There are certain powers which are afforded to all of those branches. And with the executive branch, one of the powers that they have is the ability to adopt executive orders. As Assemblyman Simons has pointed out earlier, this is an overreach. This is an attempt to circumvent the legislative process where elected officials have the ability to weigh in, to represent their constituents, and to effectuate legislation that benefits all members of the community. The way in which this would be challenged, as I indicated earlier, would likely be through some sort of a litigation process, if this is adopted. But the governor has the ability to stroke a pen, adopt an executive order, and then the fallout from that is what we have to deal with. And that's why these elected officials and members of this community are going through great lengths such as this to get the word out, to get people to fight, to get people to contest this. We want to be heard.
And he can't be governor again after this.
He's got 2 terms, and his term is up
Hi, my name is Jerry Hall. I'm an Army resident. I want to thank you guys for putting this meeting together and for all the efforts that you're putting forward. I have one question on the 50% improvement. Is that a one-time project, or is that the life of the project?
So, as our taxes just pointed out, it depends in some respects on how the ordinance is set up. Now, there is a statute which is adopted back when Hurricane Sandy was put in effect, that allows individuals, if they substantially improve their property, which is 50% or more of the assessed market value of that property, they would have to raise that property. There was a push in the past to make that cumulative, so if you did your windows one year, you did your roof the next year, once you hit that 50% threshold, you'd have to elevate your property. Now, under the current statute, you're allowed to elevate your property to BFE plus 3 feet. Obviously, that's going to be impacted substantially by this rule, if this rule is put in effect. We're going to be increased by 5 feet in and of itself, but the substantial improvement, sir, is based upon the assessed market value of your property. So if you exceeded 50%, you'd have to raise, and if the rules change in the future, if you exceeded 50% of the substantial, 50% of the assessed value, you'll likely have to raise to the new level as well.
Hi, my name is James Lamar. Guys, the level of care here is incredible. So we feel that you do care about what's going on, and we appreciate it. A couple people stole my thunder on what I wanted to say. but King Murphy, the way he's approaching this is an executive order. Like, again, back to you, Counselor. Does I've been through in New Mexico about the gaming industry. The gaming industry was ratified. The governor passed the law. The gaming was okay, but it didn't. It wasn't ratified by the legislation. Is it the same thing? An executive order is a stroke of the pen and that's it?
So essentially what he's done is he's adopted an executive order, and he's basically directed these administrative agencies to go out and promulgate rules. This is what the goal is, this is what we want to address, and now you have the DEP, as Mr. Lomax indicated earlier, who's crafted these rules, these policies, which they want to enact, and we're in that rulemaking process. And this is where it starts to challenge the ability to move forward with those rules, to make your voices heard. But they do have the ability to do this, and we have the ability to challenge it if need be after the fact.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, my name is Trini Gary, and my husband and I own a home in North Cape May. I want to also say thank you for the time you put into this, and as the gentleman said earlier, the care that's coming across. I have a comment and a question. My comment is this feels very much to me like a type of eminent domain situation. And I have all kinds of emotions and feelings that come up around that. Some questions you will probably not be able to answer. One to me is that there's somebody here that has some sort of economic gain in making this move. And that's a bit disturbing to ponder on that. My question is, you mentioned a couple of times the wind turbine. And I wasn't here at the time when that battle, I guess, began. And I'm curious as to what did you learn in that process that can potentially impact how this is going to go and what we should be doing, what we could be doing, perhaps something differently or much more of the same. It's one question. The other question, and I'm just going to quickly, is what is that critical mass of participation that you think is going to be needed to change the governor's mind on this?
To your first question, is we're stronger together. So that's what I learned. So we fight together, we care about one another together, and we let everybody know that nobody's going to mess with us down here in the real South Jersey. So we're going to fight together. The second part of your question is that it's going to take everybody to get to the governor's office to let him know. And then also remember, there's an election next year for governor. So anybody that comes down here wanting to be governor, they need to respond to this concern that we have this year. So they're going to be coming down to visit and asking for their vote, asking for us to vote for them next November. So in order for that to happen, they need to rectify the situation that we have that's going to be, put upon our desk. So we'll fight the governor this year, and we'll fight the new governor next year to make sure that they understand that the real South Jersey is not going to stand for anybody coming in our house messing with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Donna Snyder. I was born and raised in this area. I own a home and a business in North Township. You touched on it at the very beginning in one of the videos. What is going to happen to people that choose to sell their home? What do they have to do if these rules get passed?
I think you may be referring to the risk assessment requirements.
It was just mentioned very briefly in one of the videos.
Yeah, so if you're moving forward and selling your home and there was no permitting underneath these rules, then there's really no requirement that you have as a seller. If you were to go through a process where you increase the height of the building, change the footprint of the structure, and you were required to go through these regulations and get a permit for developing in the inundation risk zone, so that in any area that's within that 5 feet of sea level rise change, or any construction that you would do to adjust the finished floor elevation to the new climate adjusted flood elevation. So any of the changes where you would require permitting under these rules, you would be, as a condition of that permit authorization, you would be required to create a deed notice that is attached to your deed. It is a risk assessment notification to all future property owners that that property is below those elevations and subject to flooding or sea level inundation in the future.
Okay, thank you. And thank you all for your time.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Gladys McKenney. I'm the comptroller to Willow Creek Winery, the Southern Mansion, and the Gates Farm. We carry approximately anywhere from 50 to 125 employees in this area. We also have a vested interest in what you are doing here tonight, so we're grateful that you are all working with us. We have a problem with the DEP, and I really question the idea that they don't need to go into audit. We need to audit the DEP. We have a really bad problem. When we installed wells, water wells on the property, and there are hundreds of thousands of dollars for these wells, the DEP over the past year has come in and told us we had to put meters on well water wells. These wells are for agricultural use. I can't understand what the money grab is here with the DEP, but they need to be audited, okay? Second, as it comes to our employees, we have a lot of assets in the area, as anybody could understand. We've worked hard, we've built up, we've done our job as a business. But our employees are our most, they are the best assets that we have. These employees work hard, but they don't make $150,000 a year. I don't know how they're going to make it if this is allowed to pass. More recently, in Willow Creek's history, along with New Jersey Farmers Cooperative, in conjunction with a grant that was given out by this governor, we pushed out over 1 million meals to those in need during COVID time. Okay? When we do this as a company, when we do this as a community for the members in our community, we don't need to be regulated by the DEP over well water and how we're watering our grapes or how we're watering our tomatoes. Everything goes back out to the community. My problem with this is that our employees who do all of this work for us, they're going to take a direct economic, financial hit. So you have our support in going forward, but we have got to fight this.
Thank you. If I may comment, one of the things that haven't been mentioned here tonight, and you make a great point, tourism is a big part of our industry down here, as it is varied and many, many, many industries make up this county. But if we have a total retreat in Cape May County, and Atlantic County, and Ocean County, and Monmouth County, where's the state of New Jersey going to make up that tax revenue? We send billions to Trenton every year and get pennies back. That's one question that hasn't been addressed.
Thank you.
I have just one question. Why hasn't this been announced to the major news networks? I mean, has anybody really heard any of this at any of the major news networks of almost like a dictatorship rule the way the thing was passed?
I don't know why, but I'm figuring they figure Katy County, it's all rich people that live down here. And that's what their thought is everybody's rich that lives in Katy County, so they can afford whatever's going on. So the newspapers don't care. We have Mr. South here. But other than that, we've been putting out press releases. We've been doing all we can to let people know, and nothing's...
And none of the news networks wants to pick this up.
Correct. Until the last minute. They'll wait till the last minute like they did with the wind turbines. The people that fought for the wind turbines fought for a very long time until the press started to decide to pick that up and when they realized it wasn't going to happen. So, but we're going to continue to sing out and cry out and let everybody know. And sooner or later they'll pick it up and realize we're not going to stand here.
Thank you. My name is Jack Creed, and I reside in the Villas. I want to thank everybody for all the work you're doing. But my wife always says, if we're going to speak with the facts. And the facts are really confusing. I was at the other meeting, I'm at this meeting. So I did my facts. I looked up NOAA. I looked up the NASA laboratories. I looked up the estuaries of Delaware. And I looked up the Royal Bounty. And for the facts that they've given me, from the internet, they said that over the last 100 years, our sea level has only gone up 6 inches. And in Delaware Bay, NOAA said that it's gone up 0.1 inch over the last 100 years, which means that if we go forward 76 years, the rise in water will be 9 inches, 0.12. Where are they coming up with 5 and 10 and 20 inches? Are they lying? All these federal agencies lying, or are you guys lying? Are they lying? Who's lying? I don't know who to believe it anymore. But there it is. You say, well, look up. I looked up everything I could think of. And the only thing we got to do is, can you impeach the governor? Okay, get rid of him. Okay? Another thing, all right, here's the real impact that everybody lives here. Our insurance rates are going to go through the roof. And let's say we'll live another 20 years gratefully, or 30. Do we get our money back if there's no floods? Because the last meeting I went to, I asked, how many houses we've lost totally from a flood in the last 10 years? And there was no answer. I said, how about one? There was no answer. So I don't know where they're coming up with their numbers except for fear tactics. And it looks like they're trying to confiscate land here over a period of time because they've got plenty of money and time to own the rest of South Jersey. Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Paul Martin. I'm a Lower Township resident, high school graduate. First, thank you to everyone up here for your time and service of your constituents. One question I had for Mr. Velasco, maybe Mr. Lomax to clarify, is the 50% rule. I think it'll go a long way in clarifying here. Is that 50% of the assessed value of the property or of the structure? My understanding is that it's the structure, and that there's a large difference in some cases for some of these people.
Structure, Mr. Corn. Structure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Executive Order 101. Governor Murphy owes us this money.
Amen.
Hi, my name is Jake Peterzak. I live over in the Villas. I moved down here full-time about 2 years ago now. I grew up as a kid coming down here. My great aunt and uncle in the house that I currently reside in before I bought it. And I'd just like to say I'm very happy, and it feels good being a young man to see there is some hope and that people are actually still fighting for the right cause. And also, if we can get Joe Salerno putting out signs, no dictators, I would love to get some yard signs for this, this fight. We've got, Jeff Van Drew with the no windmills. I want to see one of these signs on every single corner. I know a lot of my neighbors would love to have that sign. I know I would, and you know what? I'm glad to have you guys in office. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Paul Summers, a resident of the Villas. My wife, Renee. I just want to say thank you for all of the explorative, simple understanding of the information, no matter what it might have cost to put together. I think it was perfectly spent tax dollars. There's also a thing that the public might want to notice, I'm sure some of you do, that however Governor Murphy wants to pen himself, we're here because we don't agree with that, so right on. And you need to look up what the word wild lawful boundaries are. This is the whole approach of the 20, 30, 50, 70 agendas.
the Green New Deal, all those kinds of fun things that are really not necessary to be natural men and women. So, thank you very much. Look up the wild law making. They want to take away 15-minute cities, fun things of this nature. It's not a movie. It's just South Jersey. Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dolores Whalen. I have a home in North Cape May. This kind of reminds me what's going on here is when Chris Christie closed the parks and he was on the beach and our state troopers were protecting him. I'm glad you're going back against Murphy. There's a big problem with the DEP. I've been fighting it for years. My primary home is up in Monmouth County. In 2009, when they redid the flood maps, we got a letter at the end of 2010 that in 2011 we had to have full coverage for flood. And it's not cheap. And I understand why everyone's upset. And I fought it. I fought my mortgage company. I fought with everything in me. And they told me they would take my home if I didn't get flood insurance. So I did. And then you know what happened? Irene came. And I had 4 inches of water come through the first level of my house. She's a seeing eye puppy in training. I had a seeing eye puppy, my other dogs in the bed of my husband's pickup truck when we evacuated to my daughters. There were white cats going through my yard. So I know these things can happen, and that's from a creek. I'm in Monmouth County, but I'm 20 miles in. So here I'm a mile in, and when I bought my home, I made sure I wouldn't require flood insurance, which I didn't. And then this came about. And I looked, and I'm 1 street out of it. But I was just looking something up when I was sitting back here. And FEMA is regulated every 5 years to reevaluate the coastal floodplain. So why is the DEP making us go out 75 years? So maybe you can bring that back again. And as far as the DEP goes, they do need to be evaluated like that lady said, because I know someone who worked for them, a young person very eager out of college, and was told to sit in their cubicle and don't even ask for a project because there was nothing for them to do. And right out of college, they're making about $60,000 a year with a full benefit package. So I thank you, and I applaud you for everything you're doing. Thank you.
Mrs. Whalen, one of the things that I just wanted to fill you in on, something that hasn't been mentioned yet this evening. So the County Commissioners and Administrator Lair also asked me to look into the current status of FEMA's New Jersey restudy program. So as you're correct, FEMA is required to go through a flood analysis on a relatively regular basis, on a rotating cycle, to relook at their existing flood maps. FEMA right now is in the process of reevaluating New Jersey and updating the flood maps as part of one of those cycles. And they've completed their still water analysis. That's a technical term for the static elevation flooding. They haven't yet completed their wave modeling analysis, which is not due to be completed until spring of 2025. The FEMA still water analysis makes it pretty clear that just in that evaluation alone, we could see a ½ foot to 1.5 feet of change in the current FEMA flood maps. That's a really important number to consider because we have yet to look at the wave modeling that may change those numbers. These proposed rules put 5 feet of elevation on the prevailing FEMA maps. If it's a zone 8 right now, it'll put 5 feet on that. FEMA won't complete their process until next summer. If their process ends up putting that elevation 8 to elevation 10, this will add 5 feet to elevation 10. So it stands to reason that we would pause this initiative, wait for FEMA to complete their process, understand what the change in flood mapping might be, and then decide whether 2 feet plus 5 feet is really even more burdensome, and we should be, again, looking at shortening the time frame and reducing the elevations to a period of time where we can, as some of the folks have noted here, do a look back and see how did we keep pace with those changes over time. But the FEMA process is not something that's being discussed publicly, and I think it's one more reason why there's a flaw here, and we need to pause for a moment, allow FEMA and the federal government to complete their process, and then the state decide what to do next.
Rick Watson, I live in the Villas, and I just like to thank you all very much for your service to the community. I have a simple question. I want to know if this executive order can be rescinded by the next governor.
Conceivably, yes.
Thank you, sir. My name is Rivera Yabor. My wife, Pat, myself, retired down there 25 years ago. We did a lot of renovation in our house. But I want to know one thing. What if I refuse to pay for flood insurance? Does anything happen to my homeowner's insurance?
Can you hear me? It's really going to be up to your insurance holder and if you have a mortgage on your property.
I don't have a mortgage on
So
it.
then it's going to be up to your insurance.
So probably my insurance...
The problem that's going on right now is there's a disconnect. We have the DEP putting out maps and we have FEMA putting out maps. My job is not only the tax assessor, but I'm the CRS coordinator. So that's the community rating system. So that has to do with discounts on flood insurance, right? I don't know right now what's going to happen if you're going to have flood insurance. If you're not going to have flood insurance, we don't know because they're not working together at all. We have FEMA, we have DEP, and when these things are going to go in place, we're not really sure what's going to happen.
So right as of this moment, you have absolutely no idea what's going to happen to the people who are
I
in the
can conceivably guess that that banks are going to want to protect their assets and require flood insurance. But I can't say for sure. If you have existing homeowner insurance, if that flood insurance provider, that property home insurance provider is going to want you to also have flood insurance. I can't say for sure.
I'm going to ask you another question.
Sure.
Is this going to affect the price of my home?
The tax assessment, is that what you're...
Yes, the tax assessment.
Sure. Everyone's assessment is different depending on your area inside the municipality. Areas that are inside this new inundation zone, and if they require notes to be listed on the deeds, sure, that could be a detriment to your assessment. Your assessment would have to be lowered because that would be reflective of market value. No one wants to buy a home that has some kind of posting that they're eventually going to be in a flood zone or be inundated with flood water.
So we're in a question mark here. There's absolutely nobody knows exactly what's going to happen until this gets settled.
Yeah, but my suggestion would be fight against it because ultimately...
Well, I know we're going to fight against it. I feel sorry for you guys because you guys got to do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? All we can do is just sign the paperwork and hope that you guys go out there and do the work. It's kind of hard, I know. But the fact is, we're still stuck here not knowing what's going to happen.
Totally understand. Feel free, I'm in the same position. I own a home in Glover Township too, so I get it.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Dan Walker. This is a similar follow-up to what he was just asking, which is really, what's the effect of this on my home insurance? And I'm getting different messages, okay, just like you seemed to answer just a minute ago. I called up my insurance agent a few days ago and asked him that question. And the answer that I got back from him was that insurance rates are covered by FEMA, not by any of these flood maps that DEP is creating with CAFE and IRZ and everything else. But FEMA maps, and as long as the FEMA maps don't change, my insurance won't change. Of course, I don't have a mortgage either, so that might help. Can you comment on this?
So, exactly, you don't have a mortgage, so you don't have a bank that's going to regulate whether you have to select into these new standards that the DEP is putting out. But like you spoke with your flood insurance provider or your homeowner's insurance provider, currently flood insurance, the National Flood Insurance Program is run through FEMA, and that relies on FEMA maps. Lower Township has 2 maps currently. We have an effective map and a preliminary map. Back when FEMA put out this preliminary map, Lower Township fought against it, and they backed down and said, okay, your regulatory map for flood insurance will remain this effective map. But the state circumvented it and said, but your building standards need to meet the best available data. So now we have 2 maps that we work with because your best available data might be the effective, it might be the preliminary. I have a feeling this is going to happen a lot with this new DEP map being put out. But again, there's no real true hard answer of what's going to happen with flood insurance.
So right now, there's going to be 3 different maps. The effective, the FEMA effective, FEMA temporary, or whatever it's called. Preliminary. And the new cafe, etc.
Right, and that DEP map would circumvent the preliminary map because it would be much more restrictive, and that would ultimately be the side on building standards. So really, we're probably gonna get rid of that effective map. But again, FEMA's putting out new maps next year.
But it still depends on what the insurance company uses, which map they use.
Sure, and your bank.
Yeah, right. And that's all alone. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I wish I had.
Thank you.
Good evening, Pam Kafer. I've been adjacent to Lower Township full-time for almost 50 years. Several questions tonight in no specific order. There was a clarification that the value would be 50% would be based on structure. But is that of current market value or assessed value? Because we're all pretty well aware that they're pretty wide apart right now.
Typically, the building office is going to go off the assessed value, but that can be contested, and if you wanted to provide an appraisal to show, a more true market value of the home structure itself.
And that's likely to change in the next couple of years anyway.
Absolutely. Throughout Canada, yes.
An observation, how much is the DEP investing in Higby's Beach right now, where there's other major tussles going on, and according to the maps, it's going to be underwater in short order. So just food for thought. A clarification, please, on the deed notices. I think Mr. Lomax, you explained this, but let me understand. That's only for if there's a change to the property, not every property?
It's only if you receive a permit authorization from DEP.
Okay.
So through these rules, as an example, if you needed to get a coastal general permit under the Catholic rules, or a flood hazard permit, or a freshwater wetlands permit, a condition of the permit, if you're regulated in one of these areas, would be that you file a deed notice as part of, so your permit is not perfected until all the conditions are met. And one of those conditions will be a deed notice.
But homeowner Pam isn't going to have to do it if she doesn't make any of those applications to the DEP.
That's correct.
At least so far. Okay. To our legislators, a question. You've mentioned about the public outpouring and support, and I understand full well how important that is. You've also mentioned that you're working with 7 other districts, I believe, in the state. What is the legislature as a whole doing? Is there any action being taken there to try to pull back the executive order?
It's really been mixed. Like Senator McClellan said, the districts that we're working with, there are those that don't have as much vested interest as we do, obviously because of where they're located, and some don't want to get involved. And to be honest with you, I don't think they want to get into that fight with the governor. But again, they don't have the same vested interest that we do, and they don't have as much land orders the water like we do. Like I said, you know as well as anybody, we're a significant area down here just because we have the bay on one side and the ocean on the other. So, not to mention all the back bays and other waterways.
I'm curious if we looked at the numbers of out-of-county homeowners and where they're coming from, whether their legislators would have a little more interest in joining up and helping with this. Because, I mean, people have mentioned insurance. My son-in-law has an insurance company. He can't write a policy for me because his agency won't cover Cape County already. You know, last year I had a significant increase in my homeowner's insurance and had to switch companies because the company pulled out of Cape County already. So those are the repercussions I think that need to be pushed upon.
I agree. I'd also like to mention, I know it was brought up earlier about news networks and outlets, but you know, a lot of people in this area have second homes from Pennsylvania or even New York or Delaware. And I think if we get the word out beyond just, you know, our area and New Jersey itself, because we have a lot of second homeowners that, you know, like you're talking about. I mean, to your point, it affects a lot more people than just the people that are here.
There has been a mantra floating around for years, and it seems to fit here with the state mandate, state pay. If my property value is going to plummet because of these regulations, who's going to make that up to me? I mean, I know that's kind of a vague number to start with, but as a lot of people have said, people are counting on the property value, on their retirements, and their fixed incomes, etc. So I think, you know, maybe that's another area that could be touched upon. But I appreciate the efforts that you're putting out. I hope that more people are learning about it. I know I've been a mouthpiece for it around already. People get tired of hearing me, but well, yeah. And contact the news again. See if, you know, those morning shows want to come down and see what they're actually looking at. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Greg Komaleski. We owned in North Cape, Maine for 12 years. My wife, Linda. So, again, I want to thank all of you. I mean, it's been great information, great turnout. And I support the gentleman's saying in regards to get signs put in the property. And we are in numbers. And I would highly recommend organizing all of the counties to get people together with signs and go up to Trenton and show a sign of protest. It's protest in numbers and peace and show. So one of my questions is, so Rutgers did a study. When was that study done? And based on that one study, the DEP has implemented a 1,000-page for new regulations based on one university study. Why is the DEP not working with FEMA? How can the governor do an executive order based on one college university study to raise the flood levels to 5 feet over 75 years? And so when I submit my question, does that question go directly to DEP? The DEP has to answer that?
Yes, all comments and questions go directly to DEP, but there's also the opportunity by using the QR code that's outside to have a much wider audience for your question, which would include other members of the government, including the governor's office.
And does anybody know in regards to when the Rutgers study was done?
There was one panel assembled in 2016 and then a second one in 2019. I can't answer your question as to why DEP decided to only go with the recommendations from that study, other than to think that it aligned with their intended interests in developing a regulation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dan Sango, I'm in North Cape, Maine. I'm a second homeowner. I want to make one point that hasn't been addressed, and I want to thank you for the presentation, well prepared, is nothing has been addressed as far as roads? Are they going to elevate the roads 5 feet? What about the evacuation routes? You can raise your house, but you can't get to it. So that's my point I want to address. It seems to be a disconnect.
Thank you, sir.
Just to comment on the road issue, real quickly. Like most things here, there's really been no emphasis for analysis on reality and how it's constructible and feasible. So it's easy to raise a road 5 feet, but you're going to bury all the property. So everything we're seeing from an engineering standpoint, not really going to pull it out, really not constructible, and it's going to cost a lot of extra money if these regulations come into play.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, I'd like to thank the speakers and the panel here tonight. They came out, we tried to come out to give you the best answers possible we could give to you. We didn't want to give you bad information, so sometimes you think we hesitated. When an insurance question, it's because we really don't know the answer. And we don't want to give you bad information. But again, thank you for coming out. You're the reason why we're here fighting this fight, because we care about the residents of Lower Township. Okay, so this concludes the Town Hall meeting tonight. Please, if you haven't done already so, there's letters in the back room here. Get a copy of the letter, sign and give it back. We'll mail them tomorrow. There are QR codes, your email also. There's also a table back here that can plug in your address and tell you where if you're going to be in the flood zone or not. So visit the tables in the back on the way out. And thank you again.